speaker today is Bob Hoffman, owner and lead agent for Bob Hoffman Travel, a small family-owned travel agency located here in Sun City. A Navy veteran, retired police officer, and correction lieutenant, he studied economics and political science at the University of Connecticut. Bob and his wife, Marissa, have a passion for meaningful travel and love to experience and understand other cultures, especially their day-to-day life, religious practices, history, art, and culinary preferences. Bob has always loved planning the trips as much as taking them, and by opening his travel agency 5 years ago, he's combined his passion with his vocation. Bob will present a program on Vietnam and Cambodia based on his experiences on the scenic spirit cruising the Mekong River, with stays in Phnom Penh, Siem Reap, or Angkor Wat, and Ho Chi Minh City. He will highlight the culture of the Southeastern Asian region, touching on its history, economy, culinary experience, and especially the influences of Buddhism and Hinduism on this society. So without further ado, let me turn it over to Bob Hoffman, our speaker today. And Bob, you're muted right now, so go ahead and unmute. You're still muted.
Okay, I think I did it.
Okay, so.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
All right. Thank you for that great introduction, Sherry. I'm Bob Hoffman. I'm so happy to be here and have the opportunity to talk about travel and talk about my favorite trip. Want to share my experiences on my scenic waterway cruise down the Mekong River. I'm a much better travel agent than I am a public speaker, so I'm going to give it my best shot. I hope I can navigate my way through Zoom to share this wonderful experience with you. Right now, I am going to attempt my screen sharing. You're going to get my screensaver first if this all goes right.
Okay,
and now hopefully everybody's seeing my first slide.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, I got to warn you also, I am so excited about travel normally that I'm a terrible photojournalist. Luckily, my wife is much better at taking pictures because I'm just so excited at everything I'm seeing, I forget to take a picture of it. But so most of these pictures are courtesy of my lovely wife, Marissa. I just have to figure out how to get something out of my way here. There we go. I think that'll do it. Does everything still look okay from everybody's end?
Yes, it does.
Okay. When we arrived in Vietnam, we were greeted by Scenic at the airport. Ho Chi Minh City is the official name, but the majority of people still call it Saigon. When we arrived, it was during the reunification celebrations for the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. So the Republic of Vietnam flags, these red with a yellow star, were everywhere. Being raised during the Vietnam War, I found this to be a little unsettling, but the people are very nice throughout the region. We arrived at our hotel, the Intercontinental, and I was very pleasantly surprised. The cost of the hotel was well less than $300 per night, and it's really a 5-star accommodation. I was happy to find there was a Starbucks attached to the hotel for being one of those caffeine-addicted Americans, you know. Here's a midday view out our hotel window. Streets appear a little bit quiet now, but that definitely changes as nighttime descends upon the city. The streets are packed. The streets of Saigon at night bustle with activity, and mopeds and scooters are everywhere. We took a foodie tour on our first night. Two college-age girls picked us up at the hotel on mopeds, and they drove us through the streets while we rode on the back. What an experience. The mopeds are about 10 abreast while going down the street. And there are no traffic lights to speak of. Driving is an organized chaos, but it flows beautifully. If you want to take a turn, don't wait for traffic to clear. Just start turning left. Everybody else just adjusts and lets you through. There's no horns, no anger. Even when somebody's coming the wrong way up the street on a moped, everybody just kind of parts and shifts and lets them through. Important to know is the same rules apply when crossing the street. You just start across the street at a steady pace. Just make sure you don't speed up, slow down, or stop. And everybody will avoid you and they'll let you get to the other side. We were in the region for 2 weeks and didn't witness one accident. As I told you earlier, I'm a terrible photojournalist. I only took one picture on the food tour, but the tour was absolutely amazing. They took us to 7 different restaurants to give us a good idea of the street food scene in Vietnam. I think everyone, and I mean everyone in Vietnam, eats out. The food is delicious and very inexpensive. We had a mixed grill. One of the things we had was a mixed grill. It's kind of like a roll your own spring roll in white rice paper with all fresh ingredients and delicious sauces. We also had seafood cooked on a grill or steamed, clams, scallops, mussels, crab, shrimp, each in its own unique and delicious sauce. To give you an idea of the affordability, the 4-hour tour with guide and all the food included cost $70 total for the 2 of us. There's a lot of nice hotels in Saigon. These are some pictures that we took on the bus ride to the boat. If you'll notice, most businesses operate from open air spaces that close at night by way of a garage type roll down door. Above are the residences. We found the streets to be very clean, and although the average Vietnamese makes less than $150 American equivalency per month, they all seem to be very happy. This is our first view of the Scenic Spirit as we arrive. Scenic, for those of you that don't know, is a luxury cruise line that was founded in Australia. They have only recently started marketing efforts in the U.S. under the Scenic name. They also own Emerald Waterways. Their product is very similar to Talk. It's first class all the way, totally all-inclusive. On our arrival, we're very happy to find that although the ship accommodates up to 64 guests, there were less than 30 on our voyage. And we were the only 2 Americans on board. The rest were Australian, and what a fun group to travel with. Here's another shot of the Scenic Spirit. This is our fantastic cabin. Both of these windows open from the top with the touch of a button to create French balconies. The bed is power adjustable, and you can put up the head and lay in bed and watch the riverbanks go by. The ship is beautiful with a separate living room and bedroom, a study, a walk-in closet, a bathroom larger than my master bath here in Sun City. Here's a picture of that walk-in closet. Here's the study, and that really came in handy because I had to do some work while I was on the cruise ship. At the same time, a hurricane was threatening to hit here in Bluffton, and I had to rearrange some people's air schedules so they got out ahead of the hurricane. This is some of the beautiful lounge space. The main lounge always has treats as well as the libations. This was the lobby where we wait for the tourists to form up. Gorgeous dining room, and what the food was absolutely fantastic and abundant. A beautiful sun deck on the top, and a pool area that was refreshing after a long day of touring. Something similar to this was waiting in our room every night. Most nights it even included a small gift from the area we had visited. Here's a picture of Marisa and I on the deck with the Mekong River in the background. You can see Saigon fading away into the distance. The Mekong is much like the Mississippi River, muddy and full of activity. We had beautiful days cruising down the river. The views along the river are great. Vibrant life all along the riverbank. And right on the river itself. People hardworking and living their daily lives. We took a lot of photos at the Sadak wet market. We were just so impressed with the abundance. Vietnam is the little tidbit. Vietnam is the world's largest producer of cashews and pepper, and second only to Brazil in coffee production. A variety of fresh and beautiful produce was at the market. It seemed to go on forever. Seafood doesn't get any fresher than this. The colors were amazing. The variety tremendous. And they displayed everything nicely. This is Duke, our tour guide from Vietnam. Because the local laws, we had a separate guide for Cambodia, and his name was Mao. You'll meet him later. Poultry doesn't get much fresher than this. Variety of eggs. The people are the main treasure of Vietnam. They are all just so polite and friendly. And the flowers are beautiful. Here again are some examples of merchant shops near the market, open air at the street level. It amazes me that no matter how old they are, their knees still seem to bend well enough to sit on these tiny stools. I don't think I'd ever be able to get back up. Scooters there can transport a whole family. I've seen up to 6 on a single scooter. There's so many different influences in Vietnam. It's had so many different governments and rulers. It had a long French colonial period. And here's a good example of French colonial architecture. It's a beautiful old colonial residence with very rich wood carvings and mosaics. We were welcomed there for an afternoon tea, courtesy of Scenic. Scenic also took us to a circus performance. It was all aerobics, but it was really an amazing performance. Here we're back on the river. These are some examples of fish farms that were all along the river. These are floating homes, and underneath is a wire mesh or pens. And the fish are fed and harvested through trap doors in the deck. Mainly catfish were raised on these farms. Another view. There's a huge lake called Tonle. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Tonle Sap. The river in this area swells to 5 times its normal size during monsoon season, and it actually reverses flow. So most of these houses on the lake are built either floating or very high on stilts. This bridge washes out every year and has to be rebuilt. Here's one of my favorite people. Don't ask me to pronounce his name, but he was the bartender at the poolside bar. There are some beautiful sunsets along the way. Dark seems to descend quickly on the river, however. There's only one bridge in the whole journey. Unlike European river cruising, where the low bridges limit the size of the boats and the rising and falling water levels can interrupt the cruises, this bridge is built large enough for a ocean liner to go under, and as a result, the river depth never affects the Mekong River cruises, and they're able to build our ship 4 stories tall. We rode a variety of transports. This is a human-powered bike rickshaw. Yeah, I felt kind of badly for the driver that got stuck with me. But he was a rock star. He passed everyone. As you can see by the smile on my face as we passed my wife, Marisa. Here's Duke boarding his rickshaw, and it's not quite as easy a task as it looks. Our main form of transportation in most of the areas were tuk-tuks. Here's an example of what a tuk-tuk is. It's an elaborate carriage towed by a moped. They can transport anything by scooter, with a trailer or without. This one is transporting bamboo. It's towed by a scooter, and there's other scooters assisting it. I've seen them going down the streets with refrigerators and bureaus on scooters. It's amazing. Silk is a booming business. This factory produces silk on looms that appear to date back to the early industrial age. Vietnam is much more industrialized than Cambodia and has many modern factories, mainly producing clothing and footwear. Setting up these old looms is hard and intricate work. Here's a look at the raw silk before it's spun into thread on these spinning wheels. I had to take a picture of this. This is the bright green lettering there is actually a safety sign, and it translates to safety is you, accidents are enemies. Here's a dad taking his kids to school. Families and family honor is very important in both the Vietnamese, and Cambodian cultures. Families always seem to be together. Here we stopped at a little cottage market where they made all sorts of treats, from puffed rice cakes to caramel cakes. They also make a local favorite called snake wine. Those are actual snakes in those bottles. Looks disgusting, doesn't it? So, of course, I had to try it. Floating gas stations and clothing shops, and there are whole markets floating along the river. Some of the vessels didn't seem very seaworthy, but they're still in use. I don't know if I'd trust this one. Uniformed children riding their bikes home from school. Like I said, the greatest treasure were the people. Especially the children. And I don't know if it has anything to do with the Buddhist influence or not, but they are all just so humble, so welcoming, and they'll run up to you with water. And being an American, I immediately thought they're trying to sell me something, having visited throughout Europe, encountered that. No, they won't accept anything in return for it. They just think you look hot and want to help you out. Here we're watching them work in the rice paddies. Touring these little villages was just amazing. Here's a man working on garden stakes while his daughter reclines in a hammock. Even the most modest villages have flourishes of beauty. Here's a local market in one of those villages. We also visited a place called Silk Island. Most of the inhabitants are women, and it serves as like a battered and women's shelter, for lack of a better word. It's a home to silk weaving, and in the silk center, you can see how the whole silk production process works from beginning to end, from the mulberry chomping silkworms through their golden cocoons, through to the complex manual weaving process, which requires a lot of dexterity and memory. Here's pictures of the beautiful silk cocoons. Well, of course, we had to purchase some souvenirs. Our trip had an unexpected pleasure. Our guide, Mao, for the first time in his almost 20 years as a guide, took us to his father's house. We were passing by on the way to Siem Reap. He normally stays on the ship, but this time he's traveling with us to Siem Reap since he was embarking on a new Emerald sister ship that was leaving the next day from Siem Reap. Here's our motley crew with fresh coconuts that Mao had climbed a tree to harvest for us. Here's some views as we approach Phnom Penh, the capital of Cambodia. Here's two, I believe they're Ama waterways, riverboats that were what they call rafted. That's when riverboats tie up next to each other. I thought our boat was very impressive. At night, we're treated to a dance performance by some local dance troupe of male and female artists. Part dance, part aerobics. Here's a beautiful view of the countryside. The turtle has a special place in both Vietnamese and Cambodian culture. It symbolizes longevity, strength, and intelligence. The Vietnamese think they are descended from dragons. We visited a local school. And the children accompanied us on the walk through their village. They were just so precious. Here's Duke on a girl's bike. He was quite an entertaining guy. Here's another beautiful rice paddy. Local farm. Here's some more examples of French colonial architecture. As I said, they transported everything on these scooters. It was amazing. After a full day of touring, we relaxed poolside. One night, the staff even joined us for a full-blown pool party. And I'll tell you, the Australians were quite entertaining. Now, I've grouped all the temples together. We visited a total of 4 temples. If you notice, some of these slides are a little out of order. We're jumping back and forth between Vietnam and Cambodia, but I tried to keep them in the most coherent order that I could. The Buddhist temples were absolutely beautiful. Stunning in their design and their landscaping. In this picture, I'm wearing a krama around my neck. The krama is worn by most Cambodians. It's a multi-purpose scarf. Serves as a hat and head covering, a grocery bag, a swimsuit, a baby carrier, and sometimes even a privy. It all depends how you tie or how you use it. I went to a class that showed 100 ways to tie a krama. Some more views of the beautiful temples. Here's a procession of monks in their saffron robes, followed by nuns in white robes. Nuns are both male and female. The temples serve as a social safety net. Older individuals without families to care for them will often live as a nun in the monastery. Men and women live separately in small bungalows, but eat communally from the tithe that the monks collect. Here's an example of a very simple nun's quarters, and a little more ornate one at a different monastery. Wat Hanchi, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, is home to many very young Cambodian novice monks. They go about their daily lives studying, hanging out, taking a break around the temple, and then they report to the temple for lunch. They have very simple meals that are donated by the local villages to the monks. This is another example of the social safety net. Families that cannot care for their children will enroll them in the local Buddhist school and let the monks care for them. This novice monk pictured here was 8 years old. Mao, our guide, pictured here helping the novice with his robe, used to be a Buddhist monk. Unlike other religions, and they don't like to call themselves a religion, they consider themselves a philosophy. Most don't tend to stay monks for life. Instead, they achieve enlightenment and then they return to secular life, possibly later in life returning to the monastery as a nun. The most notable structure in the complex is a Chenla era brick sanctuary. This weather-worn red brick structure dates back to the 8th century. Here's a view from the Wat. A Wat is a name for a regional temple. They even had a pet pig. I guess it's considered good luck. Just thumbing through some pictures. There's that same novice monk on a balcony. Beautiful view down to the Mekong River. This temple was in what used to be the capital city of Cambodia before it moved to Phnom Penh. It was a royal temple, so it's very ornate, very beautiful. Here we're watching the monks and nuns seated for their evening meal. Beautiful paintings. Just kind of flipping through to give you a good idea of the beauty of all these monasteries. Oh, that's not a very beautiful picture. And I can't emphasize enough how nice the people were. Our guide told us that for a while, Americans weren't well liked among the older generation. They call the Vietnam War the American War. But all that changed in 1995 when we opened up diplomatic relations again. And the younger generation just love Americans. We visited Raffles Hotel in Phnom Penh, which is a beautiful, famous hotel right there. And Scenic provide us with a high tea and Femme Fatale cocktail. The Femme Fatale was invented for Jackie O. Seems the king of Cambodia had a crush on her. And when she accepted the invitation to come to Cambodia to go to Siem Reap to see Angkor Wat, she stayed at the Raffles and they invented this cocktail for her. We're pictured here in the Elephant Bar, which Scenic again treated us to a cocktail there. Elephants are almost extinct in Cambodia due to landmines. So many landmines are littered throughout the jungle by the Khmer Rouge when they ruled Cambodia, that the Cambodian elephant is in danger of extinction because if they step anywhere near one of these landmines, they trigger it. From 1975 to 1979, Cambodia entered a very dark time in their history. The Khmer Rouge ousted the king and installed Pol Pot as their leader. A high school was converted in March and April of '76 into a prison and interrogation center. The Khmer Rouge renamed the complex Security Prison 21. From 1976 to 1979, an estimated 20,000 people were imprisoned at Tuol Sleng. I don't know if I said it right. the name of the prison. At any one time, the prison held between 1,000 and 1,500 prisoners. They were repeatedly tortured and coerced into naming family members and close associates, who were in turn arrested, tortured, and killed. It is estimated that during this period, a total of 2 million residents, or 25% of the population, were killed by the regime. The Khmer Rouge wanted to make Cambodia great again by returning to the ways of the Khmer ancient culture. They emptied the cities, ordered everyone out, and made everybody return to a rural economy. They believed the entire population should grow rice as in the old days. They exterminated everyone who had a higher education: doctors, lawyers, clergy, teachers. They even went after those who looked educated. Anyone who wore glasses or spoke a foreign language was executed. So I told you that in this purge, they exterminated 25% of their population. They used various forms of torture to extract confessions from the prisoners, having them admit to being enemies of the people. Once they did, they were taken to the killing fields, which a very famous book was written about it. The prisoners were brought here for execution and buried in mass graves. Most have still not been excavated. Here is one area of excavation. These are mounds atop the unexcavated graves. This area of excavation was almost all children. No bullets were used. Prisoners were beaten to death with special clubs. The children were also killed, as Pol Pot said, quote, "What good to kill the tree if you do not also eradicate the seed?" This is rather graphic, but this is the children's tree. Children were beaten to death up against this tree, and the younger ones were actually swung by their ankles and beaten against the tree till death. Cases full of skulls serve as a memorial, a reminder of the genocide. Well, on to less dreary things. This is the Park Hyatt in Siem Reap. Again, very affordable, and this was our $150 a night suite, Siem Reap. Included a separate bedroom and living room, a beautiful bathroom, and our own private deck to the pool. This is a pool looking out from our deck. Another view of the pool. Corridors, flowers, the gardens. Here's a shot of having cocktails with Greg and Lisa, our newfound Australian friends. Now the highlight of the presentation. My narration is not going to necessarily match the slides since there are so many of them. I'm just going to go through the slides and tell you some interesting facts about Angkor and Angkor Wat. Oop, circus picture ended up in there. Angkor Wat is a temple situated in Angkor, Cambodia. Angkor Wat was built in the early 12th century for King Suriname as his state temple and the capital city. Apart from Angkor Wat, the city comprises of Angkor Thom and Bayong Temple. Angkor Wat is believed to be the biggest pyramid in the entire Asian continent. Angkor Wat is the largest and most beautiful and best preserved temple in the entire complex of Angkor. Angkor Wat spreads across 400 acres and is said to be the largest religious monument in the world. It was listed as UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1992, which has encouraged international investment to save the complex. Since around 1850, Angkor Wat has been featured in the center of the national flag of Cambodia, as if to show their incredible pride in the ancient monument. Their pride is also reflected by putting images on the various forms of currency. In Khmer, the Cambodian language, Angkor means city or capital city, and Wat means temple grounds. So literally translated, Angkor Wat means temple city or city of temples. Was originally built as a Hindu temple and dedicated to the god Vishnu, breaking from previous king's tradition of worshiping Shiva. It gradually turned into a Buddhist temple towards the end of the 12th century, and is still used for worship today. Monks can often be seen in the complex, and there were some there the day we visited. Angkor Wat is built as a symbolic representation of Mount Meru. Mount Meru in Hindu mythology is a sacred five-peak mountain standing at the center of the universe. It's said that the three Hindu chief gods, Brahma, the creator, Vishnu, the preserver, and Shiva, the destroyer, and Hindu demigods reside at the top of this mountain. Unusually, Angkor Wat is oriented to the west, a direction that typically relates to death in Hinduism. Unlike most Angkorian temples, which commonly directed to the east, Angkor Wat is to the west, a direction associated with death. This direction also means it faces the sunset, which adds to its beauty and attracts many visitors. Unfortunately, as you can see by the pictures, we went on a very rainy day. The bas reliefs at Angkor Wat read counterclockwise, which is the reverse of the normal order, and is thought to be another indication that the temple is associated with the funeral rites. Here's some neat pictures that our guide lined us up just right for. We're actually very far from those faces, but he knew just how to line us up. If you notice how our hands are positioned, very interesting greeting in Cambodia. And the entire ship's crew was Cambodian. So every night on our way to dinner, we were greeted by a hand gesture similar to this, but the fingers were placed up to the nose level. The significance in the Cambodian greeting is where we have our hands now is the way a Cambodian would greet a peer, a friend. If you raise it to your chin, that's where you'd greet a parent or an elder. If you raise it up to your eyebrow level, it's where you'd greet government leaders, monks, and very distinguished college professors, etc. So I thought it was interesting, and they always greet you with these hands clasped in this manner. Here are some of the many faces. The construction of Angkor Wat is thought to have taken 35 years, 300,000 laborers, and 6,000 elephants. Contains 5 million tons of sandstone that were quarried from a holy mountain 31 miles away from the site. Each block weighed up to 3,300 pounds. So the logistics of moving the sandstone are mind-blowing and must have been extremely labor-consuming. The workers had to get creative, which is why it's thought that sandstone was floated down the river on rafts. There's no mortar used anywhere in the construction. Instead, the blocks are joined by a vegetable-based glue. This is Ta Prohm. I think I'm saying it right. And it was actually the main set of the Tomb Raider movie. Paramount paid them $10,000 per day for 7 days to film there. The film took Cambodian tourism to a new height, attracting millions of tourists. The main scene of the film orbited around the ancient Angkor temples, especially the mysterious Ta Prohm temple. The crumbling and ruined scenery, along with the live action of Angelina Jolie, made the film even more successful. This wonder has not been totally discovered. Archaeologists are still finding ancient settlements in the area of the Angkor complex. As you can see, the temples are all in various states of repair, even before the Khmer Rouge. The temples were allowed to deteriorate, but they weren't touched during the Khmer Rouge, and the jungle reclaimed a lot of the temples. Here's a beautiful shot of Angkor Wat. There's actually, even though the Cambodian flag and all just show the three main spires, there's actually 5, which you can see from these photos. It's just an awesome view. In order to visit the temple, you have to wear head covering and your knees have to be covered. The entrance to the whole complex here is $37 for 1 day, $62 for a 3-day pass, and $72 for a week-long pass. I highly recommend hiring a local guide. We did that. The guide, I forget exactly, but it was somewhere between $70 and $100 for the day. And we rented a tuk-tuk, and that was less than $40 for the day, and took us all over. This is a staged photo that they allow us to pose for within the temple. Some women in traditional dress. As you can see, there's still a very significant Indian influence to the Khmer culture. Beautiful bas relief. Carvings of mythological battles and real battles throughout. The deities. It's just an awe-inspiring day touring this. Certain flourishes of color. Just so you know, when this was built, it was all very brightly painted. course, over the years, the paint is all gone, so we're just seeing the sandstone structure. Here's the Cambodian guide that we had reserved for the day. Met us right at the hotel with the tuk-tuk. It's just, there's so much to this complex. I would definitely recommend 3 days there. And hopefully you'll hit a sunny day where you can see the sunrise and sunset over the temple. This is a 7-headed hydra. Has a lot of significance. Bayonne Temple. As you can see, they're restoring portions of it. Very difficult since there's no mortar or metal used in the construction. They're trying to replicate it in the same fashion. But it was almost voted as one of the 7 wonders of the world. And definitely a bucket list destination. Some of the stairs were a little tricky. And here you can see 3 faces in this photograph. Here's one of the bas reliefs of the battles. Here's an elephant bridge, paying homage to the elephants that helped create the temple. Just amazing to wander throughout the day. Here's one of the trees growing out of top Rome. And monkeys actually are quite irritating. They've inhabited the whole area and they are very, they'll come up and beg from you constantly. There's how you spell what I've been pronouncing as Tom Prone. I hope I'm saying it right. Scenic treated its guests to a private night at the temple, a private dinner with dancing and the light show on the temple itself. It was just a fascinating affair. There's a picture of Maurice and I taken by our guide. Gives you a good view of all 5 towers. Now, this is just a QR code. If anybody wants additional information on this or any other travel, you can just aim your phone at the screen and with your camera open, and it'll pop right up. It'll take you to a page on my website where you can register to win an American Express gift card and register to receive more information. Now let me see if I can figure out how to stop screen sharing, and I'll open this up for questions. Okay, I think I'm back.
Yes. So I saw one question, and it was wondering how strenuous the trip was.
Well, that's a great thing. I really can't say enough good about Scenic. They have options based on every level of ability. Not many, I mean, exploring Angkor Wat you do at your own pace. So as much or as little climbing as you want to. If you want to get into the inside of the temple, it is quite strenuous, but there's a lot to be seen from level ground. Give you an example of how great scenic was. My wife was not feeling well the day we went to the Silk Island, and we happened to mention it to. We had two guides with us. The Cambodian guide we were in Cambodia, so he was leading the tour, and the Vietnamese guide who was there to assist but couldn't speak. And I just told Duke, I said, Maurice is not feeling well. Immediately, he took us back to a tuk-tuk, took us back to the ship. The cruise director was waiting for us, and they had already lined up if she wanted to go be checked out. They had a taxi waiting to take her to the local hospital. It was just amazing how they cared for us. She was good within a day. I will say, I believe it's a good idea to take anti-malaria medication because there is still some malaria in Vietnam and Cambodia. And we think that her illness that day was an effect of taking the malaria medication. So I hope that addresses the question.
And then another question, someone asked when you took this trip?
It was August of 2019.
Okay.
And it's a very long flight. It basically, with the time changes and everything, it takes you 2 days to get to Vietnam. But the flights were very nice, and because of the low economy there, it's amazing the vacation value because the whole trip, everything included, airfare, hotels, the whole 9 yards, was less than $4,000 per person. So really for 2 weeks.
So, and another question was, did you feel safe throughout the trip, or were there times where you were less or more concerned about your safety?
I have never felt safer. Crime is almost non-existent in Vietnam and Cambodia. I think partly to do with their culture and partly to do with the totalitarian regime. But no, I don't think I've ever felt safer. The people are warm and welcoming. The guides were always within arm's reach of us, and people went out of their way to make us feel welcome. So I don't think safety was a concern at all.
Was it hotter than normal, or like hotter than South Carolina, or about the same?
I would say it was hotter. It was brutal at certain points. Yes, it's a jungle, and it's very, very hot and humid. But that's why it's nice that we had the luxury air-conditioned ship to return to at night. And the way Scenic sets it up is they tend to have a different excursion every morning. They bring you back to the ship for lunch and relaxation, and then they have a separate excursion in the afternoon, and then sometimes an evening excursion on top of it. And they're called free choice excursions. So for most of them, you get your choice between 3 different activities. Like one day we could go bird watching, we could go to a fish farm, or we could go to see some local cottage industries. And depending on what you wanted to do, you signed up for that 3 or 4 hour excursion. Then back to the ship, back to the air conditioning, a nice lunch, and back out again.
Did you see any war damage?
Oh, yeah, I didn't go much into that. Yes, we went to a war museum that had a lot of both American and Russian weapons that were left behind after the war. I don't know if people know this, but the U.S. dropped more bombs on Cambodia, who we weren't at war with, than was dropped in all of World War II. The reason is the Vietnamese used Cambodia and Laos as places to attack the American troops from. Then they could retreat, and they figured the U.S. wouldn't go after them because we weren't at war with these countries. But yes, there's a lot of war damage, and there's a lot, the main thing is there's a lot of landmines that are left. We didn't say much about the Khmer Rouge because they hated the Vietnamese, the North Vietnamese, as much as we did. But then eventually the Khmer Rouge demonstrated itself to be a very brutal regime. And they're the ones that planted most of the landmines trying to stop the Vietnam from attacking them.
And I see John Lefebvre has his hand up. John, you can unmute yourself and ask your question. Sorry, we don't hear you yet. You're unmuted.
Is this better?
Yes, that's better. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, Bob, did you see any of the Cambodian bands playing with their limbs knocked off from the bombs?
No, I did not.
When I was there, I saw a few of them at different sites.
Oh,
it
my
was very
goodness.
depressing to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They endured a lot between, what they did to themselves was worse than what the U.S. did to them, but that was still quite a fiasco.
And I see Bernie has her hand up as well. Did you have a question, Bernie? You can unmute yourself and ask. I'm not hearing anything. So are there any other questions before we wrap up? Well, thank you so much, Bob, for sharing this trip with us and all the experiences that you and Marissa had while you were visiting Vietnam and Cambodia.
Well, thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity. It was great to share this with all of you. And if you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out. I love talking about travel, as you can probably tell.
Well, thank you so much. Let me make just a couple of announcements and then we'll do our drawings. The board has begun discussing whether we will meet in person in the fall, but we would like feedback from our members. So just before the meeting today, a 2-question survey was sent to you on your email, and we hope that when you see that survey that you'll just take 1 minute and respond to it, because it'll give the boards some feedback. It is anonymous. We're not asking for CAM numbers, names, anything like that to identify who is responding. So we hope that everyone will respond to that survey and help us with making the decision that we need to make for the fall about in-person meetings or continuing on Zoom. Obviously, we have to have the input from Lifestyles as well. And so, if they say no in-person meetings, we can't have in-person meetings. But if we're given the choice, we would like feedback from our membership to know what you all would want to do. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, September 14th And Tom Anderson is going to be speaking with us. He's been a speaker before, and he is a cruise ship lecturer, so he's a very good speaker. His topic is going to be the UNESCO World Heritage Program. So today we saw Angkor Wat, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and he's going to, our speaker in September is going to tell us even more about that program and how sites are selected and all the different things about that. So we hope that you will join us in September. So now we'll go ahead and draw for our 3 gift cards. We have a Kroger, a Publix, and a Cracker Barrel gift card. So my husband is drawing for me.